This is Paige from the Film Photography Project, and recently we received a series of questions from a film shooter for FPP founder Michael Raso. Question 1. When did you start shooting movie film? What camera did you use, and what film did you use?
Well, hello, Paige. It's very nice to see you, and I'm so thrilled to receive some questions regarding movie film, which folks who listen to the podcast may know is my passion. I got started shooting when I was a child because growing up in New Jersey in the 1970s, my dad was a prolific movie film shooter. At all family events, he was always shooting movie film. So, of course, when I was old enough, my dad was kind enough to loan me or let me use his camera, which was a Bell & Howell 672 XL.
So the first camera you used was the Bell & Howell, and the first film you used was Super 8. Fantastic. Question 2. In terms of shooting expired black and white reversal movie film, should the overexposure rule apply to it? I understand that reversal film doesn't have as much latitude as negative film, and overexposing too much would result in almost no image?
That's an interesting question because it kind of crosses over into still photography. So there's a lot of information on the web about shooting expired film. And traditionally when we talk about shooting expired film, it's usually color negative film. And there's an unwritten rule. There are actually no rules. There's an unwritten rule that says, oh, hey, for every 10 years your color negative film expires, open up one f-stop, meaning overexpose one stop for every 10 years. The rule doesn't really apply to black and white film. Black and white film has much more stability than color film. So you don't necessarily have to apply that rule to it. And when you're talking about movie film, so many movie cameras are automatic, especially Super 8, that I can't think of anyone that I know of, and certainly myself, who compensates for old film. Mostly because there's not a lot of old movie film out there that people can still shoot with. Certainly there are a lot of color negative 16 millimeter films you could buy off eBay and maybe do a one stop, two stop compensation, but it's not something that day to day I ever think about. Black and white reversal film, it's a positive film that folks shoot who want to project their film. It could also be scanned. Because black and white is such a stable film format, I've never thought about applying any type of overexposure rule to it. Fact, though, black and white reversal and color reversal, the latitude of it is much narrower than negative film, meaning that you really should shoot it at the proper exposure, because if you do overexpose too much, you can start losing picture, meaning it'll be clear or white. It's a big question, and I hope I answered it clearly.
Question 3. What subject matter would you not accept in movie films? What kind of censorship does the FPP impose?
For folks who don't know, the Film Photography Project, starting in the year 2019, started offering movie film services. When I say that, I mean we sell movie films in regular 8, Super 8, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter for folks shooting movies, and we offer the develop and scan services. We do not offer these services for still photography film. There's no censorship at FPP. You are free to shoot whatever you would like to shoot as long as it's legal.
Thanks, Michael. Question 4. How would you feel if I were to shoot expired Kodachrome film, even though you told me not to in your videos? I know that Film Rescue International can develop those old films.
I have published some videos regarding old Kodachrome and vintage Ektachrome, and in some of those videos, sometimes I feel a little bit of a regret of how opinionated I was on these subjects, but I'm really just trying to steer people in the right direction. So generally speaking, if you're a movie film hobbyist shooting movie film, and you develop your own film at home, which is not common, then you have the luxury and time to experiment and do things like shoot old Kodachrome and then develop it at home to see what your results are. It's a very particular type of film. It was discontinued in 2009. the processing, which is a very special chemical processing, services stopped in 2010, which means that no one on the planet can develop Kodachrome as color film today. And the only thing that you can do with old Kodachrome is develop it as black and white. There are very few select labs, we do not, select labs like Spectra Film and Video on the West Coast, Film Rescue in Canada, and they will take vintage Kodachrome and they will develop it as black and white. The service is expensive and the results are usually poor. The only reason that I ever think, this personal opinion, only reason someone should develop old Kodachrome is if you find some already exposed movie film in your parents' or grandparents' house, and there could be priceless memories on there. And in that case, it's really a risk because you're spending a lot of your hard-earned cash on something that may result in no images whatsoever. So if you're a new movie film shooter, I've been trying to steer people away from going on eBay and buying, way too expensive in my opinion, old Kodachrome film, because the results will not be worth your time and money when in fact you could just buy brand new film and get so much better results.
Question 5. Michael, what is your favorite movie film format and your favorite kind of stock?
My favorite movie film format is 16 millimeter film. Even though I started shooting Super 8 as a child and my first few film classes that was Super 8, once I graduated to shooting 16 millimeter, I never really looked back. It's a wonderful format. It's semi-professional. There are a number of feature films shot on 16 millimeter. You can shoot a short film, music video, or feature film on 16 millimeter. And I just love it. I just love it. I don't have any one particular film stock, and I say that because I'm always shooting different film stocks, because I'm always testing film stocks here at the Film Photography Project, because we're continually introducing new film stocks for movie film shooters. So my favorite film stock is usually the stock I'm shooting at the time, but if I had to pick a favorite, I would pick it from a practical perspective, and that is Kodak 200T film, especially in Super 8, because it's a great middle-of-the-road, average, everyday, beautiful color film that you can use to shoot exteriors, and you could use it to shoot interiors with some lights turned on in the house. So from an amateur perspective, I always recommend, and I love, and I always grab it myself when shooting Super 8, Vision 3 200T film, because it's so versatile.
Question 6. I understand you probably won't reinvent Super 8 sound film, but the thing is, I really wish it made a comeback. The question is, do you think that Super 8 sound film has any sort of future at all?
No. So recently, a FPP customer sent in some family home movies that were shot on Super 8 sound. They were shot in the, looked to be mid to late 1970s. And I walked into our scan room where Dave, our technician colorist, was working on it. And I just stopped dead in my tracks because it was so wonderful to see someone's home movies with sound. And I said to him, because, I mean, this was before video. And at that time, all movies were silent. So, you know, relatives who had a great-grandparent or grandparent maybe had the opportunity to see their grandparent on movie film, which was wonderful, but in their life they never heard them speak. Family members were speaking and singing at a birthday, and I thought, oh my God, this is priceless, because somebody today can see their grandparent, great-grandparent talking, and it's such a rarity and such a great thing. But the need for Super 8 sound film ended the moment that Sony, Panasonic, and the other great video companies made home video available to consumers, and people just started grabbing video cameras, and it made Super 8 sound completely obsolete. So I know the romance of it. I understand, as a film shooter, I understand how romantic it is to see on eBay a Super 8 sound film and think, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to do this. But The film doesn't exist anymore. The film that does exist on eBay can't be developed anymore. It's really just it's obsolete. It's obsolete with no comeback in sight. And one last thing for folks who don't know what Super 8 sound is. So Super 8 sound film is Super 8 film, but it has on the side of it a magnetic sound strip. Think of like cassette tape. It has magnetic tape on the side of it. So while you were shooting your Super 8 film, essentially your Super 8 sound camera was recording sound onto, let's call it cassette type tape. It was really cool, but sadly gone.
Question 7. Do you know what 9.5 millimeter film is? If so, are you guys considering bringing the format back?
Romance. There's so many romantic things about film. And you read these things on the web and you see pictures and it's very tactile, My God, 9.5 millimeter. The answer to that is absolutely not. And I say that lovingly because, everything we do here at the FPP is based on practicality. Practicality of how many cameras are out there and can someone just grab a camera. For example, anyone can go to a yard sale, flea market, antique shop, eBay right now and grab a Kodak Brownie 8mm camera and just start shooting movie film. The services are available. The film is available. 9.5 millimeter was a French format invented in 1922 for amateurs, for people who would want to shoot amateur home videos. It was unique. The sprocket hole was down the middle as opposed to being on the side. I've never seen it. I've certainly read about it. It was never a format available here in the United States. So back in 1922, what was going on here in the U.S. was Eastman Kodak was introducing 16mm film for amateurs to shoot in their home. We're looking to bring back film stocks that have a practical application in 2023 and beyond so that, people could just pick up a camera they find anywhere and start shooting.
Makes sense. Question 8. How are you and John Fedeli doing this year? How long have you guys known each other?
Well, that's a fun question. I know John Fedeli since 1984. I met him at college. He was more of a writer. I was more of a cinematographer. I approached John Fedeli at William Patterson University because I wanted to shoot movies, but I was not a writer. And I said, John, why don't you come up with some ideas? I will shoot it. You will write and direct it. And we made a series of short films, which I hope to restore very soon. I will indulge myself and put them up on Instagram and maybe YouTube. On and off, all these years we've been working together, both professionally and for fun. And John, of course, is a big part of the film photography project.
Knowing both you and John Fedeli, I would love to hear the names of some of these short films that you two produced together in college.
Oh, sure. Attack of the Potato People, which is available to watch on YouTube. But John and I worked on The Green Man, which is currently in storage. We worked on Tag Your It. John and I worked, I want to say semi-professionally, because we were just starting out, but these are films that were released. We worked on Ghoul School for 22 days with no break, which is why we're friends. I mean, if anyone's working, 13 to 16-hour days for 22 days in a row, and you're still friends at the end of that, then I'd say you have like a lifelong friend. We worked on The Basement, which is a Super 8 feature film horror anthology, another hell ride of a production, which we're currently in the process of remastering and hopefully released to streaming. And then John and I worked on a number of outlandishly titled feature films professionally for late night cable TV, which I'm not going to go into some of those titles.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Question 9. How would you feel if I told you that I'm going to shoot a ton of movie film next year, especially for fun purposes and at my university?
I think that sounds great. That sounds great. It's when I went to college, I only excelled at the classes that were art classes. That's it. I only got A's in art classes. Art, photography, filmmaking, that's it. I was a rotten student. So, as a matter of fact, one of the classes, economics, taught by Dr. Costigan, because I can never forget him, walked into the first day of class. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, my class, if you fail every single quiz, but you show up to class on time, you are guaranteed a D in my class. And don't you know it, folks? I got my D. And he told me so. Mr. Raso, you deserve your D. You had to show up in class, and you couldn't be late. So what do I recommend? Well, as someone who blew it for grade point average, I highly recommend that you work really hard at passing all your classes so you get really good grades, because all those grades will mean something in the future if you want to do something like teach, go to graduate school, or do something in your life. So don't be me. Take your classes seriously, even if you're not interested in them. Economics, business administration, mathematics, all the stuff you don't care about. Get a good grade. That is the best advice I could offer anyone from someone who didn't, and I regret it.
Question 10. Why do you suggest that I don't change speeds in 16mm film? Because there is a dial that allows you to change the FPS in your 16mm camera like a keystone. I understand that the shutter speed will be different for each FPS, and if scanning at a constant rate of 16 FPS or 24 FPS, lower FPS will result in fast motion, and higher FPS will result in slow motion. Have you ever considered changing the FPS in your 16mm camera mid-roll to make an awesome slow motion film?
No. And I'll tell you why. So back before video editing, before digital editing, these were decisions that you made in camera because you had no other options. So if you're shooting your student film and you're projecting it in class, projecting it on a projector, the projector is moving at, let's say, Super 8, 18 frames per second through the projector. If you shot your Super 8 film at 64 frames per second, you would get perceived slow motion. If you shot at 12 or 8 frames per second, you would see perceived fast motion. And you were stuck with that. So that's all you had. But now everything is this digital workflows. So even myself, I don't do any projection anymore. Everything's a digital workflow. I shoot on film, scan my film, edit on digital. There are two reasons why not to alter the frames per second, especially in 16mm, especially on the wind-up Keystone 16mm. And this is the first very important one. These cameras are ancient, and I don't have the skill to open the cameras up and fix them. And there are very few shops actually no shops that I know of, that will fix your Keystone 16mm. Perhaps there are, I don't know of them. There are quite a number of shops that will repair, clean, lubricate, adjust Bolex 16 cameras, Aeroflex 16 cameras, but that's costly. And I don't know. Not everyone has. Most people don't. I don't have, $300, $400, $500, $800 in my pocket just to do a repair of something that could be avoided. And the reason being, I say to shoot at 16 frames per second in your Keystone is because that is what the camera was designed to shoot at. And the camera is now 60, 70, 80 years old. And the oils and lubricant in the camera are not what they should be. So all the inner workings, gears, springs, if you crank your camera to 64 frames per second, which is running the film amazingly fast through the gate, the camera is most likely going to go boing and blow a spring, blow a gasket, stop running. It's just not recommended. Plus, if you're shooting 16mm at 64 frames per second, your 4-minute reel is now what? Your 30 seconds, a minute. It's just, you could do all of this in post-production. So those are the two reasons. Number one, the camera probably physically can't handle the stress. Number two, this could all be done digitally. These are the facts, from where I see it, from someone who shoots a lot of these cameras and has broken them.
Well, that was fun.
Yes. I'm very happy to answer any questions, especially regarding movie film these days, because it is my passion, getting back into it after a long hiatus, launching the Film Photography Project, where for 12, 13 years we talked about still photography. So,
Thanks for your time, Michael. This has been 10 Questions for Michael Raso.